go, UK Column! Brian! Hello. Okay, well, it's really fantastic to be here. This is a live UK column news event. What we're going to do is we're going to run through some newsy sort of topics, and then we'll make enough time for questions, because we very much want to engage with you, the audience, because I've been told, allegedly, that you're all very nice people. Now, the first thing to say is this is absolutely a team effort, so I'm delighted to be here with Mike Robinson and also Charles Malet. But of course, we can't do what we do without the full support of the rest of our team, and we've got Kenny here, who's our video man for the day. We have Stephanie, who is normally with us in Plymouth. And we've also got Claire, who's still there looking after the tents and chatting to people, the UK column tent. So this is a big. And what I'd just like to say, first of all, is we always remember all of the people who've been with us for a long time, because it was the people that supported us and donated to us in those very early years that made the difference. And I remember when we were doing live talks then, people would come up to us and they would press £20 into our hands, or a fiver, or you get a cheque for £25. And it was a lot of relatively small donations which actually made it happen. And then later there were one or two, I'm going to say, more mature people who were very generous to us, and there is no way that we could have made this what it is today without the help of all those tremendous people who donated and supported us. And it's the members that count, because there are a lot of people who watch the news, but they don't support us in any other way. And this is a great shame, because if we had more members supporting us, and we think that £5 a month is a very modest contribution, but if we had more people, it would enable us to expand faster, and that's what we've been trying to do. So we're saying thank you to you, big thank you if you've been a long-standing member. If you're not a member of UK Con yet, perhaps you've considered doing that, because that would make our day. Should we kick off?
Yes.
Okay, well, I get the first speaking slot. I don't know why that is, but
You created the introduction.
I created the first slide. So if we could pop that up on screen. The important thing, thanks so much, Stephanie. It's can you guys see that at the back? Well, I wanted to say a big thank you to the organisers of this event. So can we give the organisers of the Sounds Beautiful Festival a really big round of applause? Okay, so on screen is a picture of a little camping table and a chair and a kettle. And I saw this when I was up quite early in the morning, and it just appealed to me for lots of reasons. Now, of course, you realise that this is a fake photograph. Why? Well done. Right, so this wasn't this morning. This was actually very early yesterday morning, and I just wandered around with a camera. I was very discreet, but I took a picture of this because it was just lovely, the blue kettle shining in the sunlight there. But it tells you something else, that the people who left their kettle out on the table trusted everybody else here. And so there's a great little lesson out of this, that here we are all at a campsite. We got cars, we got cameras, we got equipment, we got money. And I have not met anybody who's unduly concerned, because everybody here is a friend. This is how life should be. Yeah. And I'm also old enough to know that not so many years ago, this was true for people in their houses. They didn't lock the back door, they didn't lock the doors, because they trusted their neighbours. So with respect to people of a certain age, one of our advantages is that we can actually be a bit nostalgic and we can remember back. And it's no coincidence that some of the organisations have been talking about the need to remove nostalgia because they don't want people remembering life as it was. Now, I'll just take you on to another picture. This is actually the UK column Village. So this is our little group of tents. But when I took this photo, I was pretty astonished because I noticed this. And I thought, my goodness, that's quite a bonfire they're planning down there. Okay, so I'll maybe come back onto that. But I sat there in my chair and I thought at 6:45 this morning about what I was going to talk about. Sometimes we prepare well in advance, sometimes you just leave it to see what comes to you. And I sat in the chair this morning, so that's also yesterday morning in the View, just to have a think through what was going on. And of course, the key bit was election. And I'm saying it's a scam. It's an absolute scam. It's a puppet theatre. So the same old, nothing really changes. The colours change, but the policies don't. This is very clear. And I think more and more people can recognise this now, that it's just a pantomime played out for us. Now, the politicians, I think they're largely puppets. I think they're controlled. And one of the key ways that they're controlled is the whips. But I'll mention them again in a couple of seconds. But the key thing is we know that amongst the politicians, there is a climate of fear. They know enough about their own system and problems in that system to be fearful of it. And that's pretty incredible if they claim that they're the key drivers of a democracy to keep us all safe. So what am I talking about? Well, if we talk to politicians who are speaking out, we might choose Andrew Bridgen. He's another one of the politicians that says, yes, I've got support from other MPs, but the trouble is they're all scared. They are scared that they will do to them what was done to Andrew Bridgen. So this idea that we're in an upstanding democratic state is simply nonsense. And it's the power of the funders to the parties, millions of pounds going in from individuals or big corporations to all the main parties. So the real power isn't the political power, it's the people who supply the funding to keep that political power going. We've got the power of the whips. Now, I've put a name up there. Every one of you should know who Peter... have I got the right name up? I just looked at it and realised it's the wrong person. I'm looking for Tim Fortescue. Thank you. Okay, well, it's live, so that's fine. So, why, all right, let's do it the other way round. Peter Sutherland is the UN ambassador for migration. And he made a statement which said that basically we need more mass migration within the European Union in order to break down the homogeneity of the nation state. So all this business that migration is some sort of accidental thing and people are moving continents to look for work, no, it's created misery. So that man had been in my mind, but the whip I was interested in, Tim Fortescue, if you go onto YouTube and just put in BBC whip Tim Fortescue, there's a very old BBC documentary where they interview this man who's a whip during Ted Heath's government. And he talks about the role of the whips. And he says, well, the MPs could come to us with a problem and we, the whips, would fix the problem. It might be a problem with money. They might have been indiscreet. It could be a problem with little boys. But we fixed it for them because once we fixed it, they would do as we asked. And then he looks at the camera and he says, you may think this is a little bit hard, but that's the way we worked. So here was somebody admitting to camera that when they encountered people who were abusing children, it was covered up in order to control the MPs themselves. So it's pretty strong stuff. Reform. A lot of people getting very excited about reform. Now, I'm going to say straight off, I think there's some very good, genuine people who stood up as reform candidates. Do I personally trust Nigel Farage? I'm afraid I don't, because I saw what he did to UKIP. But a lot of people are thinking because Nigel Farage has stood up, they don't have to do anything anymore. Nothing could be further from the truth. If we're to change the system, we've got to do things individually and in groups, and we mustn't rely on anybody to do it, including the UK column. Small parties and the independents, there's a lot of them this election, and we would say that if you want to make a difference, vote for those people, because they might not get in, but the number of votes that goes to the independents and the new small parties gets noticed by the big boys, and they worry about it. And those small parties need support. The other thing to remember is that if you haven't got another candidate in your election ward, you can spoil your vote. And why is this a positive thing? Because if you spoil your vote by writing the vote, something polite, sensible, I don't trust any of these parties, that comment is read out in front of the candidate. So each spoiled vote has to be identified as a spoiled vote in front of the candidate. So if you end up with thousands of spoiled votes, this is a big rock in the election, the fraudulent pond. I've got support here. That's okay. So if you never thought of this before, you're entitled to do it. Some people use bad language or say things which are aggressive. You don't need that. Just make your views known that you're not supporting any of the parties. Now, I don't want to labour a point, but when I said there was a problem with this fire, I really think there was. We had a chat with the boys that sometimes this sort of stuff gets out of hand. Now, we're camping, the UK column are camping, but we know some of you are glamping. Anybody here in one of these? Oh, okay, so you're there all amongst the luxury. So let's go on through a few things that are coming up in this election. This is one of the key statements. Britain is broken. And we say, no, it isn't. It has been broken. This was calculated. It's orchestrated, and the policies that the individual parties bring in, they always overlap, they always continue, and they are creating the decline in the country. Now, there's a couple of names there, Nick Bowles, Danny Kruger, and Eric Pickles. Well, I'm throwing those at you because the UK column's mentioning these people a lot of times. Nick Bowles, an Conservative MP, on public record saying that the Conservatives plan to introduce a period of creative destruction in order to bring in their new society. Creative destruction. That's what we're seeing going on in the NHS. Danny Kruger was a parliamentary candidate. He told the same story with slightly different words. He said that they were going to introduce chaos. And that's what we can see around us. It's created, it's deliberate, it's orchestrated. And Eric Pickles, he was a bit portly gentleman, and he was the communities minister. And he's on public record as saying that he may look like an unlikely revolutionary, but be under no illusion, those were his words, the revolution starts here. We are in a revolution created by these people, and the start of the revolution is to destroy society as we know it. It's destroy the old so that they can bring in the new. And you've heard this one, build back better. Right? Destroy, chaos, mayhem, and then they're going to build what they want. And the society we see coming is not that tremendous. Levelling up, that doesn't mean levelling up, it means levelling down. It means flattening stuff for them to introduce what they're doing. So words and what they say is important. And This is a phrase I've known for a lot of years. I don't know who actually said it, so we just take it as it is. But the revolution always eats its young. And what they mean is that the people who create the revolutionary process to destroy a country, to create the new society, when that new society comes into power, it destroys the people that helped create it in the first place. So we're talking vicious politics here. And what do these people love? War. So if you think about it, Iraq, war and chaos, and Libya and Syria, and now we're into Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine. This is a very sad little clip of the mass graves in Ukraine. And of course, the one thing that nobody's talking about in the UK at the moment is the number of dead in Ukraine. Estimates are up around the 400, 500,000 dead on the Ukrainian side, and maybe as many as 100,000 on the Russian side. Does the BBC talk about this? Do the MPs talk about it? No, because they are callously using the Ukrainians as the proxy war. So I've looked around here and I've watched people, and I can't see anybody here that gets up in the morning with a cup of tea and says, darling, I think it would be good to have a war today. So there's nothing wrong with us, but it's very easy to see that we've got politicians that we simply can't trust because they are not stopping this violence and the killing. They are increasing it by pumping in the weapons. So this is the BBC. I had to start with the BBC because it's such an easy target, but I always like to see exactly what it's got to say. And here is Stanek. He's going to be live, apparently, and there's mention of Laura Kusenberg. We'll come on to her. But if I just do something magical with this particular image, I looked at this and it was bottom left that caught my attention. So let's expand it. So we got this really weird cartoon image, and the bloke's almost got a dunce's cap on, and he's thinking, he's very confused, he needs some help as who to vote for. Presumably he's going to take advice from the BBC. And then the girl, she's just drinking her coffee. Does she know what she's going to vote for? But this is childish, and yet it's supposed to be for adults. So are we these people that this little ad thing is relating to? And if we are the people the BBC is talking to in this, well, they are insulting us. They are treating us like ignorant children, and we should not accept this. So a bit more into the BBC, and it's our friend Keir Starmer, but just look at him. He's got the suit on and the tie and the glasses, and he's basically saying, trust me, because he's courting veterans and military people. He was down in Aldershot. So trust me, I'm going to look after you. How am I going to do it? I'm ready for the next war. And they are already talking about a form of conscription to get youngsters into. So we need to deal with these people and call them out. And he's also the man, of course, who was scurrilous in saying he's not really interested in Westminster. He can only get business done in Davos. So he's saying he's not interested in this country or the democratic systems, with all their faults. He's saying he's going to do his business elsewhere. So this was the headline that really grabbed my attention. Sunak to face BBC's Laura Kusenberg. What does that mean, to face her? Who is this woman? Is she the person that adjudicates on who's going to be elected? Face. What's it mean? And then it added days before voting. So what does that mean? What does that headline actually mean? Because I don't know. But I always look at the detail of the BBC because they always play with words. They are messing with your brains the moment you start to look at the material. So that's what it said. Here's the gorgeous young lady, power dressing. She's got the red jacket on, so this is the roughy toughy stuff. And she was going to interview a load of people. But if you're going to have a look at who they are, it's really who they're not. Because where are the independents? Where are the new candidates? Where are the people challenging the system? They're not in her debate. And this, of course, is because we're in elections which are a racket. and the small people are being squashed out because many of them can't even get on stage at one of the hustings. I need to speed up. So where are the other parties? But this is the image that the BBC website put across. So they couldn't even choose something that was real. You've got this synthetic mix of a studio and number 10 Downing Street. And in the discussion, the Prime Minister responds saying the last few years have been difficult, but the United Kingdom is in a better place than 2010. Does anybody believe that? No, all right. Okay, we're on the same page. Well, this is the BBC hitting one of the smaller parties. Now, we're short for time, so I can't cover all the little parties. I chose this one because here's David Curtin on the BBC. What have they done with him? Well, in the article, the BBC tells the reader within the first few lines that it's a right-wing party. And of course, a lot of people will immediately switch off. So the BBC brands them at the top of the article as being right-wing before it describes to the reader what they're really doing. And of course, they choose what I call a shouty image. So the image is taken when he's got his mouth open, and this is the man who's raging at the microphone, big open mouth, aggressive. This is deliberate manipulation of people. This is the real man when we interviewed him with UK column. He's actually very quiet and measured and reasonable, but the BBC doesn't show him in the same way. But he was quoted in the BBC there as saying that the country was in decline. It was being destroyed. The institutions were being destroyed. And I have to say, I completely agree with what this man is saying, because he understands that there's a war against us. And this one also came up, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. So the headline is Lessons to Help Ukrainian Children Remember Heritage. So the BBC won't cover the Heritage Party in UK, but when it comes to Ukrainian children, we're to teach Ukrainian children their own heritage. That's a good thing, I think. But I just add that it's the BBC that doesn't want us to teach our own children the heritage of England or Scotland or Wales or even Northern Ireland, Mike. Even. So that was me just trying to set the scene a little bit with this wash of what's in the election. But Mike has got a video clip here which he couldn't resist but pick up.
Well, just before I do that, I just thought I would ask Brian, you're criticising the BBC for putting 10 Downing Street behind the presenters. Right. And suggesting that this is some kind of strange mix of virtual and reality. You got something to admit here, maybe?
Well, I can answer that one.
You can't?
No.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm going to cover two topics today: CBDC in a second, and then who knows what organoids are?
Me.
Other than you. You saw. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So anyway, but before we do that. We couldn't resist David Cameron because how many people have seen that David Cameron got hit by Vovan and Lexus a couple of days ago? No. No? Well, a few have. Well, let's play we'll play a couple of minutes of this.
Good morning. Hi. Good morning, David. How are you there?
Hi, Pedro. Where are you?
Now we have some problem near in Donetsk region too, because they're trying to capture some towns in the near Slaviansk. So, and we have problems in Kharkiv. So they choose two different, absolutely different ways how to offense on Ukraine. So I'm here, and the situation is really terrible. Not so happy.
No. Is the American money and weapons making any difference? Is it beginning to arrive?
Yeah, it's beginning to arrive, but it is really slow motion at this moment. The problem is, of course, we don't have enough soldiers on the battle, on the front line, and now we started mobilization, but it's still not enough.
What I mean, I obviously stay in very close touch with Dmitry Kuleba and talk with him about all the things that are needed, particularly the air defenses, the arrival of the American munitions, the campaign to make sure other countries do what Britain has done and make multi-year commitments. So I'm very joined up with them. It's very annoying that the American money took so long to arrive.
How do you think? Do you feel that anything will change if elections
No,
will happen?
I think that the opposition party is as enthusiastic about defending Ukraine and helping Ukraine as the Conservative Party. So I don't think you'll see a change. Obviously, if they win, it'll be a new government. There will be some getting up to speed on some issues, but I think fundamentally they've supported everything we've done, because I would say we've been probably the most advanced government in, multi-year money, Storm Shadow, training, all of the aspects, the security uh, undertakings and partnerships, the support in NATO. I think we're probably one of the most enthusiastic allies. But I think the Labour Party, if they win, will continue that approach.
So I'll stop it there. But you get the point. Unity party, right? And the fact that Britain is leading the way in Ukraine, because that's who is driving everybody else to do what they're doing. But anyway, I was walking around yesterday or this morning, I can't remember when, but listening to the conversations, and CBDC was clearly on some people's minds. So I thought I would just bring us up to date. Sorry, excuse me. Unlike Brian, I need notes. So you've seen a bit of what goes on behind the scenes. So anyway, look, this is the European Central Bank. And earlier this week, they have announced 48 new participants in their pilot program for CBDC. They're calling this it's wholesale DLT settlement trials. So what was perhaps a little bit surprising for many commentators was that Hong Kong has got involved in this as well. With this particular one, I'm going to come on to the Bank for International Settlements plans in a second. But we'll mention Project Ensemble, which is a separate Hong Kong situation, a sort of project to develop CBDCs. And at this point, we're talking wholesale CBDCs, and I'll explain what the difference is between wholesale and retail CBDCs in a second if you don't know. But this is a Project Ensemble, is a parallel effort to bring about, and what they're attempting to do is to set up a sort of Bitcoin style distributed database thing so that they can process these things amongst various parties. But of course, included in this one, in the Hong Kong one, is what they're calling their digital green pound. So you can see where this is going and what this is intending to drive. And then another one, this time from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, a third program here, Project M-Bridge. And what they say about this is China, Hong Kong, Thailand, the United Arab Emirates, and now Saudi Arabia has joined this as well. And so Saudi, as many of you will know, has recently dropped the petrodollar. They've dropped the dollar for trading oil, and so that opens the way for other currencies to get involved, and probably central bank digital currencies as well. And I think that's a pretty important point. So let's just remind ourselves of how this works. So this is from the Bank for International Settlements. And there's two main types of central bank digital money. On the top there, you have what's known as wholesale CBDC. And these are probably relatively harmless for you and I, because this will enable the central banks to do what they're already doing with other mechanisms. But it'll make it a lot easier for them to do it digitally, print money and so on, without us really understanding what sort of quantities they're printing. So the wholesale CBDC only available to financial institutions and to the central banks themselves. And then the bottom track there, you've got the what are called retail CBDCs, and these are the ones that you and I may have access to if we so desire. Do we?
No.
Good. And two types there, as you can see on the top side there, we've got account-based retail CBDCs where all users are identifiable, and we've got token-based retail CBDCs where they claim that users can be anonymous. So the past government was asked what their policy was on this some time ago, and so let's just run through what they have said here. The digital pound would complement the role of cash in a digital world and give people more choice on how they make individual payments. So that should reassure everybody. Yeah. £10 of a digital pound would always be worth the same as £10 of banknotes or coins. But £10 in banknotes or coins are worthless, so it would be issued by the Bank of England. That makes me feel much better. Widely available and convenient to use. It would be easily exchangeable with other forms of money, including cash and bank deposits, and it would be accessed through digital wallets offered to the public and businesses by the private sector through smartphones or smart cards. So this is the ultimate public-private partnership, because that's, of course, at the top of the pyramid with the money. It would be intended for payments made online, in store, and between individuals rather than savings, so there's no interest paid on it. There'd be no restrictions on how much an individual, there would be restrictions on how much an individual could hold, at least initially. And then this is the, like banknotes, it would be a claim on the Bank of England, have intrinsic value, laugh, and be stable, unlike unbacked crypto assets. So the question is, that was the previous government's position. What would a Labour government position be? Can we guess? So here is KPMG, a summary of the Labour Party's plan for financial services. I just pulled one sentence out of this. The plan supports work on a central bank digital currency by the Bank of England and states this will continue. So nothing will change I don't think anybody here will be voting Labour, but that is it. So a quick wrap up on CBDC. No doubt we'll have some questions on that later. Over to Charles.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start with the question. Who here feels that their ability to buy and supply themselves with the food that they would like to eat, grown in the right conditions at a fair price, is something that they have sorted? Who feels that they're in that position? Okay, one person, which is more or less what I expected. Okay, okay, well done. 3. Very, very few people feel like that, but it shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. What we're going to talk about today is the way in which that should be possible to achieve and how quickly it can be subverted. On Thursday of this week, I went to an event that you may have heard of called Groundswell Agriculture. It's the sort of Glastonbury of farming, if you'll forgive the terrible connotations that could be associated with one of those. But it's now in its 9th year, and it's interesting to see how it's developed from being what was a movement of sincere positivity and a way in which to try and change the broken system of not just farming but also the supply into the food chain and what the consumer is left with. Of course, today the situation is slightly different, but it runs on 5 principles, which are diversity, livestock integration, protect soil surface, minimise soil disturbance, and maintain living roots. So essentially, it's about the soil, because without the right quality of soil, you're not going to be able to produce anything that is going to do your body any good. And that applies to both crops and, of course, livestock. But, of course, we get very quickly into the position where it looks somewhat like some of these things, which have become rather meaningless over the years, put out to suggest quality or something that you can put a price on. But in actual fact, we see it happening already. So regenerative agriculture has a number of sort of badges attached to it, and you can almost see the bandwagon trundling by as these businesses try to jump aboard the back of it. Now, Groundswell, the event itself, was very well organised, and for that I give them credit. But there was a reason for that, and that's because the organisations that it's partnered with are, by and large, big businesses, and for them to wheedle their way in and start making a difference to things is fairly easy. So I point to NIAB, who were one of the sponsors, and guess who they have just made a relationship with? None other than Jeff Bezos with his Earth Fund. So he's one of those people who now has enough money to consider that he should be spending it by telling people what they should do and how they should do it, and in particular, how they should eat. But ironically, in this particular case, it doesn't really have anything to do with soil, earth, or all the sort of things that would be providing you with good nutrition. Strangely enough, the partnership involves developing sustainable protein alternatives and expanding consumer choice. Doesn't really sound like much of a choice, but he's made a 1 billion commitment to food transformation, and yet these people are partnering with an event that describes itself as being for the promotion of regenerative agriculture. It doesn't quite add up. They go on to say that they're going to be producing cultured meat, precision fermentation, and plant-based protein. And just to give you an idea of what that might look like, there you go, fake burger made of something fake. The other people that were attracted to Groundswell, tellingly, was Chatham House, and Tim Benton spoke at length. And I don't want to take a personal pop at him, because that would not be consistent or fair. But I think I would like to make a point about what he said. Before I do, I'll talk about a document that he put out in 2022 for Chatham House about effectively how to change the system. So in actual fact, to give him credit, he does understand some of the problems. He does understand that farming is destroying landscapes, destroying food ecosystems, and giving us a bad deal in that cheap food is therefore disposable food. It gets thrown away. The cycle perpetuates. We should be able to correct that. And he put forward two versions, one of which was to try and fix the broken system. The second one was to try and change and effectively start again. Obviously, we're veering closer to the Build Back Better sort of area. But nonetheless, the way he talks about it is this. So given that changes in consumption behaviour are necessary to reduce the epidemic of obesity and related diseases. So he concentrates on behaviour. And he did actually say in his talk, which I sat through some of, he said, we can change demand. We can change behaviour. So there he is telling us all what he can do, and in particular talking about obesity. Now this is the personal bit. So he's getting into the sort of psychology of it. And you'd think somebody that is that passionate about it and evidently knowledgeable to a degree would be practicing what he preaches. And this is not a personal attack, but it was an observation. He has a very generous tummy. And if he is standing there trying to shape policy and tell people that they need to change their behaviour and stop eating ultra-processed foods and wasting food and overeating and all the rest of it, and he's not doing it himself, then he falls into the category of people that we hear from absolutely constantly about what we should be doing, but they're not going to do it. Yeah. But just to highlight the obesity thing, these are statistics, they are a bit out of date, but I don't think this is going to have changed a huge amount. And I think it is something that's worth saying, because if you do eat properly and you have access to the right sort of food, this does not happen. And you look at any part of the world where, the food system is in effect much more simplified than what we see here, and we don't get this. So I think actually most alarming, I would say, is this bit on the right here, how you see that, first of all, there is a huge percentage of overweight and obese people of considerable youth, but also how quickly that changes once they get beyond the age of 24. I mean, that is quite staggering, and that is entirely due to the system that we have, and of course the subsidy perpetuating it. Anyway, bandwagon I spoke about, and so surprise, surprise, who's jumped on it? Unilever for one, and they're talking about regenerative agriculture, and they're going to do it. They're going to actually, the world will change because they're going to put in all these practices, and it'll all be better, but they will still produce their sort of fake meat sausages, pot noodles, and Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Nestle, of course, the big guys, still doing Kit Kats and Cheerios and all the stuff full of sugar and more fake stuff, burgers and whatnot. But the point is that the absolute irony, which didn't seem to be grasped by the people that were running or present at this event, was that the whole point of it is that you're trying to deal with soil in such a way that you're not constantly trashing it. And yet their answer immediately is to throw big, very, very expensive machinery at it, and therefore immediately shut out all the people, all the small landowners who should be able to do it properly, but they're not allowed to because effectively the concept is subverted, and it's then their version of what is regenerative agriculture. And at the NIAB briefing, it added to the 5 principles that I showed earlier, she added a 6th, which was context. And of course, what she meant by that was, much like we see with international humanitarian law when it comes to the situation in the Middle East, if you write this, you can really mean anything by it. And so this has happened exactly with the regenerative agriculture. Of the other people that were there that I had the chance to speak to were DEFRA, the Rural Payments Agency, and Natural England and the Forestry Commission. I thought that would be a good one for the UK Column audience. It'd be nice to go and talk to them and say, you know, I'm from UK Column. It'd be very nice to have a recorded conversation with you. Can we talk? And in particular, I said, you know, can we talk about this? Because Natural England have the ability at the moment to, in effect, seize land and designate it under this scheme. And Derek Thomas, Labour MP, well, obviously was a Labour MP, has set up a private member's bill to take this effective power back to DEFRA. And so I wanted to know what Natural England might consider would be the ramifications if this did come to pass and all the rest of it. And quick as a whip, the girl I asked said, "Well, no, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you because there's a general election." And the election guidance, out it popped. I mean, they are so well briefed, and they all said it. And so I looked. There were 3 of them there. And we did the. Well, will you talk about it? How about you? Come on. And they all said, no, we're not going to talk about it. And they said it's because this is in the guidance. The basic principle for civil servants is not to undertake any activity that could call into question their political impartiality. So I thought that was nice. At least, you know, during the general election, we talk about political impartiality. The whole of the rest of the time, absolutely fine. To be completely partial, that's okay. But still, so we did that. Anyway, I talked about the bill, the private member's bill. Of course, actually, the truth of it was they'd never heard of it. So that was why we had to hide behind the screen of the sort of the electoral guidance. Anyway, and the other thing that came up, sorry, I'm rushing a bit, so I know we're going over probably on time, but there we go, you're a bit used to that. The other thing which is worth pointing out, again, on the sort of, I suppose, greenwashing side of it and the money-making side of it, and how the control mechanisms, such as planning, which we all confront in our lives, either because, you know, neighbours have controversial planning things, or people complain about something that you should do, and all the rest of it. But biodiversity net gain, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about and probably do know a significant amount about, but it's just, you know, again, interesting to note that within the concept of regenerative agriculture, which is supposed to be improving the ground, actually, a lot of people, of course, have their eyes out thinking, well, where's the opportunity? What can I make out of this? Rather than what food can I produce for people that will be available to them in the right place, right time, for a fair price. So biodiversity net gain, and I'm not going to read through all this, I think we're probably not quite time, but effectively the point of it is that in the development phase, a developer, of course, who has great clout, the whole big power, big money thing, is able to put forward plan for a development and to offset by saying that there will be a net gain of such and such a percentage. And if they go way over the threshold, which to do so doesn't cost them very much proportionally, is overwhelmingly likely to tip the planning authority towards approving their scheme. So you just see how iniquitous the system is that's been set up, and how we fall foul of all that. Again, just to say, you know, Kraft Heinz, of course, in on it, because of course the other thing was climate, so again, it's a sales pitch for landowners who can explore options for delivering net gain, and you have your baseline assessment, and it's obviously any increase from there is the sort of the selling point. So the wrap up really is that regenerative agriculture is something I think you're going to hear more about in the public domain in the coming years, but you'll hear about it in a corporate sense, and that's going to mean more money for all the businesses and all the people that already have a lot of money, and still the inability of people in this country, in the developed world, and of course very much increasingly in the developing world, which I've spoken about recently with regard to seeds and fertilizer and that kind of thing, but it's very hard to see how this will actually be countered by people who are in effect powerless to resist it. So I hope that gives a sort of a bit of an insight into what's going on in the supposedly regenerative agriculture world. What I would just leave you with is, if you want to know more about how to do it properly, I ran an excellent interview with a guy called Angus McIntosh, who's farming in South Africa. And I would say I don't expect you're going to agree with everything everyone says all the time. That's not realistic. But I would encourage you, if you haven't listened to this interview already, he gives a very, very good idea of how to manage land without subsidy, without any government intervention whatsoever, to get it right and to have his farm workers. He's in the Western Cape in South Africa. He's got his farm workers all, invested in the farm, all eating the right stuff at the right price, and it is doable, it is achievable. So please take a look at that. That's the end of that segment. There we go. I don't know if we're going.
Okay, let's talk organoids. Does anybody except Stephanie know what an organoid is? Right, so organoids are used or have been used for medical research. This is where they take stem cells from adults, they take skin cells from adults, turn them into stem cells, and then they create structures with those which look like a liver or a kidney or something like that. And it's used for medical research. But in more recent times, they have been experimenting with building brains this way. Okay, for medical research. So let's have a look at this. This is from Eurostem Cell, and the question that's being asked is about the ethics of brain organoids. And they're talking about, is it possible for these structures to have some form of consciousness, for example? They don't know the answer to this. Brain organoids and organoid intelligence from ethical, legal, and social points of view. This gives us a clue what's coming next. But let's just have a look at this organization. I don't know if you can see that, but it's called Final Spark. And I'm going to say thank you to the person who sent this through to me. So you just see their name at the top left here. They're talking about biocomputing, from digital to bio. So they're saying that today AI growth is limited by the high energy use required with silicon. But AI growth will be enhanced with no energy restrictions, because they're claiming that if you use a bioprocessor rather than a silicon chip, then you don't require very much energy. It goes on from there to talk about the human brain is a powerhouse. Bloating the 86, or yes, it is, sorry, boasting, I can't, it's too small, I can't read it. Boasting 86 billion neurons and using only 20 watts of power. And this is all about Green New Deal. How can we reduce the amount of energy requirement for AI? Because you'll have heard many of the headlines recently talking about the electricity requirement just to run the data centers that they're building to support the new AI infrastructure. What are they talking about? Key benefits. They're saying that this is evolutionary. Well, if you're thinking in terms of transhumanism, of course, this is evolutionary, because one of the things that they're talking about here is connections between silicon and biological collaboration. Who's behind this? So we've got the University of Bath, the University of Bristol, Oxford Brookes University, the University of Côte d'Azur, and University of Exeter. So this is very much, with one exception, British. And nobody's aware of it, nobody's asking, are there any ethical issues we might want to consider here? Is this the right thing to do or not? But what was fascinating to me, you won't be able to see it there, it says they're based in Switzerland. Right? So what they've done is they've established this organization in Switzerland to avoid the regulatory hurdles that they might have in the UK. And this is British universities. I think we need to be asking questions about it. So let's see, what does this say? Imagine a future where the boundaries between biology and technology dissolve, with the power of intelligence and computing transcends traditional silicon-based devices. Welcome to the next evolutionary leap, the era of biocomputing in this brave new world. The Swiss company Final Spark is leading the charge, blurring the lines between science fiction and reality. Through the remarkable computational abilities of cultivated neurons in cell cultures, Final Spark is paving the way for a future where living cells become the driving force behind innovation and advancement. This fusion of biology and technology opens up unprecedented opportunities, propelling us into a realm of dizzying possibilities. That should inspire. At the helm of this groundbreaking technology are two visionary minds, Dr. Fred Jordan and Dr. Martin Cutter. These trailblazers have already left their mark on the world, boasting an impressive track record with over 80 patients for their forward-thinking expertise. They're the masterminds behind another organization called AlpVision.com, a global anti-fraud system used by some of the largest industries worldwide. Their expertise extends even further with the creation of AlpVision.com, a platform harnessing the power of AI and other disruptive solutions in the biotech and pharma sectors. These guys are not doctors. They are tech people. They're programmers. They don't have a clue about biology. Actually, they're relying on employing people to do that side of it for them. But they are clearly not concerned about any ethical considerations. Biocomputing based on wetware is not just an advancement, it is a true evolution with self-organizing capabilities and continuous learning. Wetware-based AI offers a revolutionary approach. Unlike traditional AI, it thrives as a collective intelligence. Rather than being confined to one system for a single task, science fiction is fast becoming our tangible reality as Final Spark's technology matures, paving the way for remarkable achievements. So think about this. In medical research, they were building these complex brain-like structures in order to apply some kind of medicine to them and see what the reaction would be. They weren't relying on the capability of that structure to be able to think. This is relying on the capability of that structure to be able to actually process information and think. Does it end with thought, or is there some degree of consciousness? Nobody knows the answer to that, as I said. Prepared to be astounded by computing is a staggering 1 billion times more energy efficient than current computing hardware, and that's the key point. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it doesn't leave me feeling comfortable, and I think there are many questions need to be asked, and we need to start asking them. I'm not sure what is next. Is that yes? What you?
Okay, thanks, Mike. We seem to eventually do like to see the screen phase, so I'll just tell you who that is. That's William Ruto, the president of Kenya at the minute. And if you watch the UK Column News on Wednesday, you will have heard me speak about the rioting in Nairobi. Just did it for two reasons. There's a finance bill that's been in Parliament at the minute, and also the land reform or amendments, effectively land reform bill as well. The land reform bill is due to remove the freehold from people who have property within a certain distance of a conurbation. So effectively taking money off them and converting them into leaseholders. But the thing that really kicked people off was the finance bill, and it's been a very controversial thing. And the reason I talk about it is not just to bang on about a country that's miles away, but really to say with sort of two reasons. First of all, this could happen anywhere, and it gives us such good insight into how governments do operate, and just the skimming off the top for what? I mean, to talk about government money, it's not government money, it's our money. Or in this case, it's their money, but just to set it out like this and do it, but it provoked a massive public response. And okay, tragically, lives were lost, it seems, but nonetheless, Ruto has had to sit up and pay attention. So it went through Parliament, but he still had to sign it off. He has failed to do that, and he's put out a statement, inevitably on Twitter, because where else would you put it? But he said, so a bill titled An Act of Parliament to amend the laws relating to various taxes and duties for connected purposes, short title, blah, blah. And then he says, it was presented to me for presidential assent in accordance with the provisions, taking into consideration the widespread expression of dissatisfaction by members of the public on the contents of the finance bill. the exercise powers conferred in me, blah, blah, having reservations on the contents of the bill, I decline to assent to the Finance Bill 2024 and refer the bill for reconsideration by the National Assembly with the recommendation for the deletion of all the clauses thereof. Okay, and he's signed that. So that is a very, very significant statement. Although, of course, it doesn't dismiss it wholesale, it doesn't undo any of the terrible legislation that's already in place. Nonetheless, he has been forced by public action to stop doing something that he had wanted to do. That is a lesson that we should be learning from. Okay, now a reason that they were obviously quite so worked up about this, just to say this is out of date, but it will be largely still accurate. This just shows the ratio of parliamentarian salaries to the average worker salary in the particular country. And we see that in Nigeria, politicians are paid 116 times the amount of the ordinary average wage. In Kenya, it's 76 times. In the UK, as a frame of reference, around about 2.5 times the average salary. So it's not hard to see why people would be worked up, to say the least, about this. The other thing I thought I'd do, just to sort of set the context, think, well, why is it they need so much money? Where's this coming from? And of course, it is the debt that they are locked into, absolutely deliberately and willfully. And of course, again, we can't see it, but I can describe that is a map of the world. You decide which shape the world actually is. But you can see that basically the shading, the darker the shading, the greater the debt. I think what's interesting in today's climate, and okay, this doesn't take into account per sort of land area or per population, but actually to see that the debt that Russia, India and China have, which is significant. Kenya, if you can see it, has got a sort of red line around there, but obviously all of Africa is shaded in more or less the same colour. So that there is this horrific debt trap, leaving governments who are in that situation, obviously via corrupt means in the first place, but with little choice. They have to do something. So it is a very difficult situation. These are World Bank statistics. Now, the reason I make that point is that we, again, have wheels within wheels. Here we see World Bank Live, featured speaker, Bill Gates. So it's not as though his tentacles don't get anywhere. I mean, this is just sort of accepted as being par for the course now. But it's interesting to point it out, but especially with the World Bank. And again, we're talking about Jeff Bezos, who has done Amazon and now wants to do food. But he has even got somebody, this chap Andrew Steer, who's now working for the Bezos Earth Fund, straight from the World Bank. So again, some of you may have known this already, but just a reminder really that these connections just persist. However, in terms of the sort of solidarity, I thought this was an interesting tweet from this chap, Dr. Ekuru Okot, who has a huge Twitter following and is setting up sort of alternative politics, alternative voice in Kenya. He's got, okay, for what it's worth, probably all Chinese bots, but he's got about 400,000 followers on Twitter, and he clearly is actually making a difference. And you watch rallies that people will attend and actually listen to him. And of course, the great joy of it is people are turning out in person to listen to what he has to say. But his message here is not so much to occupy the things; it's actually to kick them out. He says, suggestion. We don't need to occupy IMF and World Bank offices in Nairobi. We need to kick them out of Kenya. We don't need them. Well, that's a message that could apply across the whole world, I think. So that concludes that segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. Right, very quickly, just want to get into the business of doing things. There's something really nasty is coming through the pipeline. I think a lot of people sense it now. They sense something's wrong. Maybe if you ask them what is wrong, they can't tell you, but they sense something is wrong. But it's clear that policies are coming down this pipeline from people who appear to be sociopaths or appear to be something worse. Maybe they're psychopaths. But the policies tell us that essentially they don't have basic human instincts. And we've got to be really wary of what these individuals are doing, particularly with our children. I wanted to mention this lady, Kim Isherwood, and she's one of the ladies in Wales that have been speaking out about the appalling sex education for very young children. And if in this audience there's still mums and dads who are not aware of this stuff that's going on in schools, you need to be, because it is utterly disgusting. And what's happening here is that a group of mums, this lady is one of them, have been taking action. They've been trying to take the Welsh Government, well, they did take the Welsh Government to court, but of course the Welsh Government's got tons of money to protect itself. But nevertheless, in the publicity, they caused great upset in the establishment, because ordinary people, in this case many women with some men, some dads, were able to challenge the government in Wales about these educational policies for the children, causing very, very young children great stress and angst. If we just do the basic one, that you have little girls and little boys that are just trying to learn about being alive, being told that they don't even know whether they are a girl or a boy. So these ladies have been incredibly brave, and from 2 or 3 of them, they've achieved a huge amount just by sticking together, staying on target with the authorities and doing a great job. So there are lots of other groups around the country, and sometimes the groups will say to us, yes, but did we actually achieve anything? And I always say to them, yes, you do achieve something, and yes, you did, because it's driving a wedge into a crack. Initially, you can hammer that wedge really hard and nothing seems to happen. But when enough wedges go in, the crack runs and the thing splits. So I just wanted to say, never ever give up. If you're out there fighting the system, each and every one of you is important in what you do. This is just me saying on a key subject that I've covered over many years. You have to understand that the political system wants your children, wants our children. In Scotland, and it was David Scott that talked about this some time ago, but the Scottish government putting in a named person, and that person was to be the child's guardian appointed by the state from conception. And in an open debate, a female Scottish MP, I should have checked the name, it's gone out of my head at the moment, but this lady was on record, she's talking to the audience and they were fighting back a little bit. And she said, well, don't worry, you, the parents, will also have a role in bringing up your children. Right? So there is no doubt about where they're going. And this lady is on screen because she came to UK as a refugee. She was trafficked. She went through a horrible experience and brutally used before she got to this country. And then when she gets here with one child she was able to bring across to live in UK with her. Then she had another child. And what happens, those 2 children have been taken away from her. She's never hurt them. She's never done anything to them. All on the risk of future emotional harm, decided in a court with a judge and no jury and no press. And I stand here, and I've said this many times from this stage, the family court system is a closed court. And if you get into it, you have no way of getting justice because it's a star chamber. Everything is against you. Are they taking children? Hundreds of them, thousands of them, under false pretenses, lies, perjury, false documentation, false accusations. It's an industry. And our future is the children. So if we don't get to grips with this, okay, I'm getting a bit long in the tooth now, but I've got grandchildren and I'm thinking, blimey, if we don't stop this, they have no security against the state simply taking your children. And some people think, well, you know, I'd get macho man and aggressive and I'd stop them. No, what would happen is you'd be in prison pretty quickly, because they're already putting particularly the mums in prison for daring to speak up. So I'm not going to do more on it. You can go to the UK column and see some of the interviews we've done warning about this, but it's a really big subject because the children are our future and we've got to stop this. And my last point is that losing track of the days now. The first day I was here, my phone rang at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was withheld. I debated whether I was going to answer. I did. And the next minute I was talking to a really amazing lady with one of these child stealing stories. And since I've been here, another 3 people have come to speak to me confidentially about losing children to the state. That's just while I've been here. So you need to understand what's really going on here. They want your children's minds. They want your children. They don't want parents because you are still wise enough to understand that the policy coming through is not good. So I'm going to leave it there, pass it over to Mike.
Right, we're going to just end with a couple of small things here. First of all, Debbie Evans has been encouraging people, as many people as possible, to get involved in the MHRA board meetings and the NHS board meetings, which are often held online, and because we want to show these people that they're being watched. Well, NATO is holding its NATO Public Forum on July the 10th to the 11th, I think, yes. And this is also going to be a virtual event, and anybody can register for it, and I think we should be packing the audience. And we should be asking if there's an opportunity to ask some questions of these people, because they are insane, frankly. So anyway. And just to close on insanity, many of you came to us because of COVID in the first place. And so you'll have seen this graphic before. It's been updated because there's new variants have appeared. And it's called Flirt. Flirt. I'm not good. So there you go. There's the new variants coming in behind. The record doesn't change, does it? So I just wanted to leave with what's his name?
You want to help me on
No, you're gonna have to help me on this.
Ovi.
What's his name?
Oh, appreciate it.
No. Tucker. Thank you, Tucker Carlson. I can handle that. Anyway, this is a little bit of Tucker Carlson, because just them banging on about new variants on the BBC today. I just thought this was quite funny.
Preempted my question on Putin.
Putin!
Putin! I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask.
Putin! He's so bad!
And I also appreciate that.
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Take the what?
The COVID shot? No, he didn't. Sorry.
The COVID shot saved probably tens of millions.
Oh,
of lives.
yeah,
And
definitely.
probably
Safe and effective. This is why everyone loves the media.
Probably 100 times more lives than Putin has killed in
It's
Ukraine.
like a time capsule. It's like you're like the last Japanese soldier on Okinawa. You think the war's still going. Oh, it's hilarious.
Right, so we're going to leave it there. So I'm going to say thank you very much. Yeah.
Before we ask you for some questions, we hope you got some questions for us. I'd just like to hold up this pamphlet that UK Columns produced. I'm delighted to say a lot of you have bought it since we've been here. This is a lot of research that was done by the UK Column a long time ago. You see it says Agenda 21, but this has been updated, even though the cover says Agenda 21. This is right up to date. We felt it really important, some brilliant research that was done by a man called Martin Edwards, who's been working with us for a long time in the background, an incredible guy. We felt that this was more important now than almost when he wrote it. How many years ago, Mike?
2013.
2013. So we took the opportunity to get this in print. A lot of people really like it because obviously you can read it. It's got big pictures. You can also, sorry, it's a bit rude, isn't it? You can also share it with other people if you want to, but we're saying it's important information, so please, if you can, would you buy a copy from us, because you get the information and also help the UK Column.
Yes.
A tenner. in any currency. Pardon? Ideas.
For questions.
Yeah, so questions.
Yes. I've got a question. It's an open question for Brian, Mike, and Charles. So you'd mentioned earlier on in your presentation about CBDCs, and it sounds like it's almost certain that they're going to become mainstream in the UK in the near future. If that situation does indeed occur and CBDCs do become mainstream currency in the UK, what do you think will happen to people's investments in unregulated cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, or any of the others? It's an open question, please.
Yeah, I don't think it'll do anything to those. I think that those are completely separate, independent. No matter what you think about those forms of cryptocurrency, they aren't going to be damaged by this.
But they stay unregulated, they stay left alone, and your investments in those places would stay safe.
Well, that's another question which I don't have an answer to. I mean, we already know that Bitcoin is being made illegal in China. So regulation is a whole other question. Yes, that is a concern. Yeah. But you know that's down to us because we've got to make our feelings clear on this and stop them from regulating.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
You don't want me to start this because we don't have time to get to start this conversation. Go ahead.
I'll try and make this one easy. UK column from very early on looked at what was happening with information to people, and we stepped somewhere into the middle. And you notice today I'm not wearing a tie. A lot of people say, why do you wear a tie? Why do you wear a tie? That's the noose. And I say, I wear a tie on the programme because it helps me relate to other people in this country who wear ties to work. I do it deliberately because they see me wearing a tie and they maybe think, well, okay, maybe he's okay. If I had a suit on as well, I'd probably be better, right? But sorry, so we go down the middle, and there are only so many subjects you can cover before you start to pull away from the people we're really after, which are the people who haven't yet woken up or have just woken up. So people can say to us, you're not speaking about chemtrails, you're not talking about viruses, you're not talking about this, you're not talking about... No, we're not. Because the people who are just waking up can only cope with a few things at a time. And if you give them too much, they either just switch off or you actually start to mess up their heads because they get scared. And our view is that we've gone in for a niche, we've been successful in winning people who didn't really see anything, and now they do. And then we say there are many other very good people talking about these subjects. So when people start to research for themselves, they can go to a number of good sites where there's all sorts of research on chemtrails, for example, and other key subjects. But if we try to do it all in 3 days news slots a week, we just end up losing, and we know this, people that we're trying to attract in the first place. So it's not we're not interested. We've talked about a lot of subjects, you know, sitting in the tent since we've been here, and we've got individual opinions on it, but it's just for UK column. If you get into every subject going, you end up diluting the fact that you're putting across some really important information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can I just quickly add to that I absolutely, of course, I echo everything Brian said, and this is not meant as a gesture of appeasement at all. But I only say this because I've got frame of reference because I've only started it with the column in October, November, I think it was. But I have done, I think, at least 5, if not 6 segments on weather modification and the projects that are absolutely there in the public eye. And that's something I am absolutely concentrating on. So it's not, as I say, I don't say, oh, therefore I've done it. But I mean, we do what's there, what is absolutely in the public domain. I really do concentrate on that, and I put it out. So I hope you have seen those things, and if not, we'll talk afterwards, and I'll point you back towards those segments. Okay.
That's it on the day. So
Hello.
we've got two questions.
I actually have a question for Brian. Charles, I was a little concerned with your language of blah, blah. I think Greta might be rather upset by that. But anyway, Brian, you spoke of chaos and destruction, which of course is what we don't want to our lives. But I think we could look at the other side, could we not, and say this would actually be a chance for us to build the world we want. And maybe we should start thinking of what that world is from that destruction. What do you think of that?
Well, that's an easy one to answer because, of course, yes, we should be optimistic and we should look at what we want to build. But the first piece of advice I would give the audience here and a much wider audience is that we've got to stop squabbling amongst ourselves, because one of the huge weaknesses in the movement where people are seeking facts and truth is that people often don't like to hear the opinions of others still. I mean, this is crazy, because if we're going to move away from these maniacs who are trying to create a pretty horrific, brave new world, we've got to start working together. And one of the things that people have said at these types of events to me is, if I ask them, what did you get out of coming? The common response is that people say to me, we're just able to talk to people about what we want to, and they listen, and we can engage them. And we haven't got to watch our language. We haven't got to feel embarrassed. We haven't got to feel. That's a brilliant start. But still, when we look across the wider sphere of people who want to do something, they're very fractious, they're very anxious, they're very easy to take umbrage with what somebody else said to them. Yeah, we don't want to be criticizing each other. If we disagree, you do what you're doing and we'll do what we're doing, and we'll go down a path together. But don't fight amongst each other, because that's absolutely what the other side wants. So it's human relations, to answer you, in my view, is the most important thing. When each of us get better at how we treat other people as fellow human beings, we are so much stronger. And I'm saying this as somebody who can have a bit of a short temper, so I have to work at this, right? But the main thing is that when people are relaxed and calm, they're not going to war, they're not stealing things, they're not blowing their brains out on drugs when they're in a nice, human, loving world. So this, to me, the relations is the first thing to do, and it's so easy because each and every one of us can make a difference the moment we get up in the morning. One more question we'll have. I think it's the loading. See, this is the UK column. You're going to have to suffer. Right. But I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay, go on.
Hi, Brian. Thanks so much. You mentioned earlier about the cases of children being stolen by the state and the corruption of the closed family courts. What would be your advice in terms of how to deal with that kind of situation? I've been working with the family for the last 2 years, the lady you spoke to, and we're being threatened continually that we're not allowed to speak about anything, and it's literally this textbook thing of there's been no harm, it's a suspicion of potential harm, people in prison, and just the most outrageous experience, including this child being hurt. How do we go about, what would be your advice? How do we, in this tenuous situation, how do you move forward? What do you do?
Well, my immediate answer is two things. One is the people that are going through this horrible process have to speak out, but they have to speak out in a clever way, because if they speak out with the wrong information, they give details of the children or where they are or what the court has said, that the family court will go for committal, will go to put them in prison. But there's an awful lot you can say where you don't have to break their rules. And there is also the case that the more you say, I can't answer that question, I can't answer that question, I can't answer that question, the audience realizes that something horrible is happening to the individual. So my proposal, and I'm working on this in the background, is to try and get more cases to come public at no risk to the individuals. That's the first thing. The second thing is that across the country, there are lots of groups of a lot of mums, there's dads as well, where they're in these horrible battles because they've lost their children. But these are very hurt people. They're very stressed, they're very frightened, they're very nervous, they're very suspicious. And it's very difficult to get them to work together in groups because it just takes a little spark and then there's a spat between them. And that's the most difficult thing, to work to get the people who've been harmed in this horrible system to come out the woodwork and work together with other survivors in order to tell their story. It's the publicity that does the damage, and I think we can help that happen to get a much bigger effect. And just to reinforce this for the audience, a lady we spoke to, I was going to say who it was, I don't think I got to do that. A lady we spoke to, we did a report on her, and the local authority tried to get her committed to prison if she didn't succeed in getting us to take the report down. Now, this is very devious because if our report had broken the law, that local authority would have come straight for the UK column. But UK column interview was mentioned inside a family court case, but they couldn't come to us because we followed the rules. What they tried to do is to bully the mother into taking information down. What it told us was that our interview, which didn't say an awful lot of things that really needed to be said, frightened the pants off the local authority, and more people need to be doing this.
Yeah, Brian, can I just say, I would love to talk to you because the case you're talking about, I've been working with them for the last few years, and we put ourselves forward as established foster parents with a history of emergency care, trauma care, all of this kind of thing, thinking there's no way that we can't be a spoke in the wheel to stop this process of taking this child, because they just can't turn, almost they can't turn us down based on our references, experiences. The reason they've turned us down is because they question our judgment to be foster parents on the basis of the fact that we're connected to extremists who believe that the COVID vaccine is dangerous.
Well,
and that we may be mentally ill because we believe in a child sex trafficking ring.
Right. And I'll reinforce that because one individual was accused of being a threat because they were associated with free men on the land, which that individual wasn't. But labels count in the family court, not truth, not fact. But that's the best answer I can give. I believe it's publicity, but it's got to be publicity that's done in a really measured, accurate way, with not 10 cases coming forward. We want the hundreds, we want the thousands of cases to come forward.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
We got to finish.
We got to finish.
Thank you.